Hello and good afternoon. This is Dania from the PM Radio Westminster, broadcasting from London. Happy New Year! The last time we were live was in November 2020, and if 2020 taught us something positive, it would be that we must adapt to survive. Today's broadcast is all about agility and adaptability. In specific, we will be looking at one of the most popular Agile techniques, Kanban, explaining it, finding all about its pros and cons from a project management perspective. Our guests are two Agile experts, Coleman and Himanshu. Jain is an agility chef and trainer and a part-time lecturer. Himanshu is a coach in Agile transformation and a lecturer in Agile project management at the University of Westminster. We are glad and delighted to have them with us today. But first, let's hear some of our latest news collected, prepared, and edited by our new PM Radio team member, Carla Roche. As usual, we try to bring you the latest in the area of project management. So here we go to some news. Anytime you need to speak about news in 2021, it's difficult to not talk about COVID. So we're talking about COVID-19 positives. It's possible COVID will become much more treatable in the near future, says NHS boss. The vaccination program for COVID-19 in the UK is currently being rolled out, with over 6 million have received their first doses so far, according to Sky News on the 25th of January, 2 days ago. However, there's another piece of good news. COVID-19 could become a much more treatable disease over the next 6 to 18 months, the boss of NHS England has said. Sir Simon Stevens told the Health and Social Care Committee, "I think it's possible that over the course of the next 6 to 18 months, coronavirus also becomes a much more treatable disease with antivirals and other therapies, which alongside the vaccination program holds out the hope of a return to a much more normal future." On the prospect of more treatments, he added, "I think a lot of us in the health service are increasingly hopeful that the second half of the year and beyond, we will also see more treatments for coronavirus." Quizzed on the vaccine rollout across the UK, with 6,573,570 first doses already rolled out, Sir Simon said, "Vaccinating those aged 65 and over will make a big impact on hospital bed usage." Currently, the UK government is targeting the over 70s and the clinically extremely vulnerable, with the over 80s the priority. Okay, now back to project management. New APM survey reveals pandemic's effect on project work. A new survey by the Association for Project Management has revealed the scale of the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on the project profession. The survey found that 70% of project practitioners feel their ability to do their jobs has been negatively affected by the impact of the pandemic, and that a quarter of all live projects are currently behind schedule or on hold. With England in lockdown and tight restrictions in place in Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, the survey of over 1,000 project professionals reveals the impact that the pandemic is having on the wider project profession. The main reasons given by those facing challenges since the start of the pandemic in March include balancing work with other responsibilities, such as homeschooling and caring for relatives, cited by 31% of respondents, difficulties in adapting to remote working, cited by 30% of respondents, important meetings and phone calls being cancelled for COVID-related reasons, cited by 30% of respondents. Challenges of communicating with colleagues and stakeholders has been cited by 29% of respondents. Interestingly, despite these negative findings, there have been a few positive effects. The majority of those surveyed reported that their employer has introduced new initiatives during the pandemic to support the mental health and well-being of staff. These include schemes such as mental health first aiders, dedicated wellness days, and increased flexible working. So even though the project profession is suffering, but projects to restore axed rail routes get £794 million boost. 2 projects intended to restore rail routes that have been closed for more than 50 years have been awarded £794 million of new funding. The Department for Transport, DfT, said £760 million will support the next phase of East-West Rail to reinstate services between Bicester, Oxfordshire, and Bletchley, Buckinghamshire for the first time since 1968. East-West Rail will boost connectivity between Oxford and Cambridge and is expected to stimulate economic growth and serve new housing developments. A scheme to reopen the Northumberland line between Newcastle and Ashington, which closed to passengers in 1964 as part of the beaching cuts, will be given £34 million to boost its development. Northumberland County Council leader Glenn Sanderson said the Northumberland line will bring a huge boost to the area in terms of economic growth, housing, employment, and education opportunities, as well as providing a fast and efficient new transport link between the southeast of the country and Tennyside. So, contrary to some views, transport projects are still a priority in the new normal, and people would always need to move around. Etsy shares jumped 9% after Elon Musk tweets he kinda loves the e-commerce stock. Yesterday, shares of Etsy were popping after Tesla and SpaceX chief Elon Musk sent a simple tweet about the e-commerce company. Etsy's stock rose 9% in pre-market trading following Musk's tweet that said, "I kinda love Etsy." According to his tweet, Musk has bought a hat for his dog. The e-commerce company wasn't moving at all in the pre-market prior to Musk's early morning call-out. It's now set to be the biggest gainer in the S&P 500 when markets open. For those who are not familiar with Etsy, you should be now. It's an American e-commerce website focused on handmade or vintage items and craft supplies. Etsy CEO John Silverman grabbed the opportunity and tweeted back saying, "Would love to open the new Etsy shop on Mars. Counting on you to get us there." It's astonishing what social media can do these days and what kind of emergent events we might witness at any point in time. Now a little bit on the grand impact of Brexit. Retailers warn they could burn goods stock in EU. UK retailers could abandon goods EU customers want to return, with some even thinking of burning them because it's cheaper than bringing them home back to UK. They say the new EU trade deal has put costly duties on returns at a time when firms are already struggling. The BBC has been told UK high street and luxury brands have a mounting volume of goods stuck with courier services on the continent. None of the retailers would comment on the problem. Adam Mansell, boss of the UK Fashion and Textile Association, said it's cheaper for retailers to write off the cost of the goods than dealing with it all, either abandoning or potentially burning them. Since 1st of January, lots of European customers have been presented with an unexpected customs invoice when signing for goods they've ordered from the UK. These new customs charges are a result of the new EU trade deal with the UK. It's part of the ongoing small print of the deal, said Mr. Mansell. If you are in Germany and buying goods from the UK, you, as the German customer, are the importer bringing goods into the EU. You then have a courier company knocking on the door, giving you a customs clearance invoice that you need to pay to receive your goods. Many customers automatically reject the goods, refusing to pay the additional surcharges, leaving couriers to take them away. About 30% of items bought online are returned, according to figures from Statista. That has meant large volumes of goods are heading back to the UK. When goods arrive back at depots on the continent, there is a new customs paperwork to complete. Export clearance charge, import charge arrival, import VAT charge, and depending on the goods, a rules of origin document as well, said Mr. Mansell. Lots of large businesses don't have a handle on it, never mind smaller ones. The BBC has seen a document that states 4 major UK high street fashion retailers are stockpiling returns in Belgium, Ireland, and Germany. One brand will incur charges of almost £20,000 to get the returns back. Couriers and freight businesses that ship from the UK to Europe are also experiencing delays getting goods to the continent because of the new customs clearances. It's a bigger change than we thought possible, explained Shauna Brown from Speedy Freight, a courier service. Before we'd get the order to Germany and off the driver would go. But now there are so many hoops to jump through. It's so laborious. You've got to have manpower to figure out what to do, and with people working from home, it's difficult. For small businesses, it's a huge thing for people to do. It's worth mentioning, though, from a project management perspective, that inspired by the ethos of responsible project management, managers should strive to find solutions that reduce waste to the minimum while benefiting society to the maximum. Just a reminder, this year is the Responsible Project Management Year, according to APM, Association for Project Management. An agile approach to working has proven more valuable than ever during COVID-19. An article by Consultancy UK stated, "An agile approach to working has proven more valuable than ever during COVID-19, throwing it into the spotlight for global businesses." A Bearing Point study presents the advantages, methods, and challenges of agile. The consulting firm Bearing Point surveyed more than 370 professionals from across the globe, half of which were business leaders in the C-suite and otherwise. The goal, to examine the state of agile transformation at a time when it has moved from an operational, nice to have, to a strategic necessity. The current COVID-19 pandemic raises awareness of the low adaptability of organizations. For others, however, it's an affirmation of the need to rely even more strongly on the agile mindset and to expand agility even further within the organization. The good news is that the majority has embarked on their agile journey, albeit within the last 3 years for some. When it comes to specific methodologies, the most popular one appears to be Scrum, a collaboration-focused system that breaks projects down into sprints of 2 to 4 weeks with a target outcome or product for each sprint. A remarkable 76% of organizations have put their faith in the Scrum methodology. The second most popular method at 66% is Kanban, a collaboration framework featuring visual representation of tasks on a commonly viewed board, where team members can track and declare the progress of each task. Design thinking, a customer-focused method where various lateral approaches to problem solving are explored and tested, is also a popular method among more than half of businesses. Other methods with notable usage include design sprints, digital prototyping, and lean management, to name a few. On this note, it's time to welcome our guests, Jain and Himanshu, to the studio to tell us more about agility, Kanban, and how to use them, maybe from a project management point of view. I'd like to welcome Jain and Himanshu. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, how are you doing?
Hi, Danya.
How are you doing today?
Very good, thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Hi to you. You are joining us from London?
From just outside Haddam.
What?
Yeah, sorry.
Just from East London.
Okay, very nice to have you. Okay, I'm in the West. Anyway, so thank you for joining us today, and we have a lot to discuss. Can we start, please, by introducing yourselves? I'll start with you, Jain.
Sure. My name is John Coleman. I'm an agility chef. I happen to be a professional Scrum trainer, professional Kanban trainer, and a less friendly Scrum trainer. And I'm delighted to be here today on your podcast. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Himanshu?
Hi all, my name is Himanshu Jain. I'm an Agile evangelist, an IT professional and a trainer in professional skills like project management, Agile, business analysis, Six Sigma, product management, etc. I'm also the co-convener of the PM Book Club. Thank you for inviting me to be on the show today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, both of you. Okay, let's start with the serious stuff. What are Agile tools and techniques? Kanban, Scrum. You've seen the last study by Bearing Point consultancy firm. John, what can you tell us about these techniques?
Yeah, there's
what the differences are between them.
Sure, yeah. So Scrum is an Agile empirical framework. It's got some rules in it. It's got, but it's really principle-based, value-based. So there's 3 pillars: transparency, and adaptation. So using evidence to decide what we're actually going to do next. And it's got some events like planning and a daily Scrum and sprint review and sprint retrospective. And there are some artifacts like a product backlog, the list of the things that we like to get done on the product, and a sprint backlog, combination of the sprint goal and the items you want to do, maybe the sprint to support the sprint goal, and maybe some kind of plan to deliver that might be task breakdown or something like that. And interestingly, in the 2020 guide, there was a change from roles to accountability. So in the Scrum team, we have the product owner, the developers, and the Scrum master. So the development team is no longer mentioned in the Scrum guide. It's really aimed at product development. It can also be used for projects, so probably more suitable for longer term projects. And I would say that in 2020, the big focus in the new version, the new guide, is that it's now really open to non-software as well as software. They made an attempt in 2017, and they've gone much further this time. So they really are trying to simplify what Scrum is all about. So it's for fixing complex problems with teams, basically. Kanban, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Tanya.
There's something called Scrumban. So what is that?
Yeah. So I need to explain Kanban before I explain Scrumban, I suppose. But Kanban is a strategy for optimizing the flow of value. So that could be customer value, end user value, knowledge value, organizational value, societal value, like reducing carbon footprint or whatever. And it doesn't have any roles. It's you don't even have to have a team. We have Kanban system members, and they define a workflow together, a Kanban board to all intents and purposes, with start point and an end point, and it's got some measures and practices in terms of actively managing the work that's going through the system, looking at aging, but it's much more statistics based. We're looking at how long does our work take, how much work is in the system, are we finishing work in the same order that we started, and stuff like that. So you can really use Kanban in almost any context, I would say. You don't even have to have a team. That's ideally you'd have a team, a group of people. It can be used at any level of the organization as well. So you could have a team of teams, portfolio, product, organization. So that's kind of cool. So Scrumban, to answer your question, Scrumban is something that I'm not a huge fan of, because with Scrumban, what you do is you kind of take what you like out of Scrum, and you take like what you like out of Kanban, and you kind of end up with, I don't know what you end up with really. But what I do like is there's Scrum with Kanban, so you can combine the two of them. There's in 2018 we had a new guide from Scrum.org called the Kanban Guide for Scrum Teams. So if you actually want to use Kanban in your Scrum, you can use that. So that basically is Scrum plus Kanban, whereas Scrumban is more like kind of pick what you want. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I see. Thank you for Himanshu. Can you tell us a little bit about the origin of Kanban? Did it exist before Agile? It came along after Agile?
Yes, of course. I mean, see, Kanban. See, Kanban in its very basic form existed in the very early 1400s, 1500s. Kanban means, can means sign, ban means board. So it's a signboard, really. But I mean, when people started talking about it in its current shape was in 40s. After the World War, Toyota was far from the industry giant we know it as today. After the Second World War, the Japanese car industry, and in fact the whole country, was in stagnation. The first Kanban system was developed by Taiichi Ono. I was an industrial engineer, later turned into a businessman, for Toyota Automotives in Japan. It was created as a simple planning system, the aim of which was to control and manage work and inventory at every stage of the production optimally. Two of the 7 wastes, that is muda in Japanese, identified by Taiichi are overproduction and large inventory. And mind you, this was not a problem in the US. With large warehouses, they could build in practically unlimited land they had. But it was a problem in the small island nation of Japan. So Taiichi visited the US in 50s, and he was impressed by a supermarket chain called Piggly Wiggly, which was able to keep the shelves stocked with just the right amount of everything that they had, that they were selling. After coming back to Japan, he began using paper cards for signaling, tracking demand in his factory, and named this new system Kanban. Now,
Is the
again,
word
Kanban,
is the word Japanese? Can
it is Japanese, and it translates into signboard. As simple as that. So again, I mean, Kanban cards in Toyota Automotive were attached to every finished product, and once the product was sold, the card would move back to the production line. Team members could only work on the new item as the card signaling a demand for it kind of moved back to them, and only once the number of pending cards reached a defined threshold, that is controlling work in progress, really. So every material used during production also had its own Kanban card attached, so that the demand signal would ultimately flow down through the whole production chain, ending on external suppliers. And obviously, you can see that such a system reduced stockpiles, improved throughput, provided high visibility into the process. Its usage quickly spread into the entire machining division, and actually in 1963, a plan was developed to propagate it further to the whole company, and shortly it was adopted in nearly all processes at Toyota, and the rest sort of is history.
Yeah. It looks like the origin was in production, and as John mentioned, it's all about improving the value of the product. So, John, how could it be used in project management? What kind of projects? You mentioned something quickly about this. You said big projects, maybe. So what kind of projects you can use Kanban for?
So you could really use it for a variety of different projects. I wrote a guide for Kanban for complexity in 2019. So you can now even use Kanban for complex work as well. There's actually a load of frameworks out there and options for Kanban for people of different levels of difficulty. You've got the Kanban method, you've got Tame Flow, Flow System, Flow Consortium, and now you've got Kanban Guide as well, which was published in the middle of last year. And you can really pretty much use it for any type of knowledge work where you've got some kind of process that the work goes through, and you can kind of list out what those steps are, visualize where the work is going through that process, and see how quickly value is being delivered through the system. In practice, I've used it in software, I've used it in banks and telecommunications companies, supply chain companies, currently using it in marketing and sales. Agile marketing really has taken off quite a bit. I see it a lot in HR as well, and research and development work. And the interesting thing about Kanban is, even if teams are using different approaches at their team level, you can also use Kanban at a kind of a higher level to see, what's going on across the company. So I've seen it in all sorts of applications, and I haven't seen a context yet where it doesn't work. I guess there's one place where you probably shouldn't maybe look at it unless if you know exactly what you need to do, just go off and do it, it's really clear, but if you feel you need to collaborate with people or cooperate with people, it's ideal for getting teams to kind of work together. And you can even use it for yourself as well, personal Kanban to help improve your own life, actually improve your mental health about all these things we should be doing and making peace with what we can actually really do, if that makes sense.
Thank you. You said if you know what you are doing, maybe you don't need it, but who knows what they are doing in these days? It's very difficult, especially if you're working on projects. So thank you for this, John. Himanshu, what do you think? Does it work in all sectors? Is it more efficient in some sectors than the rest? Does it deliver more value in some sectors more than the rest?
Well, I'd agree with John. I mean, if you can visualize the workflow, you can visualize the value stream, then Kanban has an application. Very apparent benefits are there in production or construction or there, but a high value can be derived in transactional situations, like, for example, in NHS or other service industries, marketing and education. Education technology these days is using Kanban to great benefits.
I see. And I think this will take me to the next question, which I'd like both of you, maybe you have similar ideas, maybe you have differing ideas, the pros and cons of Kanban. Now, we know it looks like a very useful tool or technique, and it brings the team together. Some research in general, they criticized Agile in general as being not so effective in risk management. So let's start with negative side, cons. How does Kanban deal with risks, especially program or project or program level risks, not operational risks, if working on a project? So I'll ask Jean and then Himanshu if you can. We'll see if you have the same views.
Thank you.
What do you think about it and Kanban? How does it help?
Yeah. So where Kanban can really help is in the management of delivery risk in particular. The usual question is, when will it be done? And people are trying to figure out when will it be done. And the benefit of the statistical approach around Kanban is we have charts around our cycle times. There's different types of cycle time. We won't get to the debates about, the different labels and so on, but how long does something take? How many items are we delivering per day, per week, per month? How much work do we have in the system? And is any work in the system aging? Like, are we kind of chasing shiny new balls instead of, kind of finishing the stuff that we actually started in that right order? And so when you manage your flow really well, and when you manage the aging of the work, in other words, you try to finish work in the order that you finish them, pretty much, you get more predictable. I wouldn't say predictable, but more predictable. And what that allows you to do, it allows you to use a technique called Monte Carlo probabilistic forecasting. And even though we might know what we're going to do next month, we can't really guarantee what we're going to do next month. I mean, are there any guarantees? But you could still probably say, if you had a body of work for a project, for example, you could run a model using statistics, ideally using the data you already have for the teams you already have. And you can play different scenarios and roll the dice like a million times. And it might tell you 85% chance you'll deliver by a particular date. But of course, I wouldn't want to give the illusion of being deterministic. What could happen is we probably should say, that's what it says right now. I'll give you a better forecast next week, because we're kind of saying things are going to change between now and next week. So I think Kanban's very effective with managing delivery risk. Himanshu, what do you think?
Well, again, I think what Dania also wanted to understand was, what we are talking about and what looks apparent is operational way of working. I mean, it looks like an operational way of working. But what I would say is, we could use Kanban in all these different levels. I mean, just the level of detail would change. The rules that we apply to the Kanban board at a project level or at a team level would be different than what we would apply at a program level Kanban board or a portfolio level Kanban board. So again, I mean, it's sort of putting the principles to practice at those levels with the right level of details. You can achieve the same sort of risk management there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Himanshu. This is and John as well, because research usually try to bring the criticism around risk management in specific. Now, let's talk about project management in general. We know that any project goes through life cycle. So it starts with the feasibility, then goes through planning, and then execution, and then completion and lessons learned. Which project life cycle you actually start using this board, this sign board, or the bringing the team together? At which phase it's mostly used? Is it during execution, or is it during planning, or both? And what kind of other techniques it could be used along with? Like we know we have lots of registers, we have lots of forms, we have lots of templates to fill in when we are managing a project. You have the risk register, issue register, change control register or log. You have all these logs. So how can Kanban, a simple board, communicate this volume of information to everybody in the team? And when is this done over the project life cycle? Any of you who would like to answer is welcome. Himanshu or John?
I can start if you like, and maybe Himanshu could come in after me
Yeah.
and top and tail. So I think the first thing would be getting back to what Himanshu was saying earlier on. Kanban, it's like means a visual signal. So we're trying to get as many signals as we can off the board about what's going on. And so if work is getting stuck in the system, are we marking that work as blocked, for example? That should be kind of almost shiny off the board. If there are some teams, for example, that seem to be backed up on work and actually there's a lot of work queuing up, are we visualizing our queues? So if we see queues, that might be an indication that there's something not quite right with our system. And as Himanshu was saying as well, you can do that at multiple levels. The one thing that I say to people is that when you start using Kanban, try to work with what's within your kind of influence, if you like. So how far upstream can you go and how far downstream can you go? And kind of start where you kind of have a bit of a say, so to speak. And then, but as soon as you can, try to go as far upstream you can in the project value stream, as far downstream as you can, so we can see end to end where our work is getting stuck. That's what I would say for now. Himanshu?
Yes, I agree. And if it means, for managing different aspects of a project, you could have different Kanban boards. But at the very basic, any Kanban board will have three things. Yeah, what is the amount of work that we need to do, which is backlog or the to-do list? What is the work that we are doing at the moment, which is work in progress, and what have we already completed, which is all the finished task or the done tasks. And then you can color code them with visual signs, define teams, type of work, blockers, all of that can be there. And you could do that for all the different aspects of projects that you are trying to do, for risk management, for incident management, for actually executing the work through different project phases. All of that is possible.
I see. So it could be used anytime. At any point you are producing something, even if you are still in the feasibility study, trying to produce the feasibility study itself, you can just put that on the wall on the board and start monitoring and tracking everything. How many people? You mentioned team collaboration. How many people? Is there a minimum or a maximum size of team that could be working on the same board, or to be effective, I mean?
So
John
Kanban
John mentioned something about you can use it without team. John, can you go back to that thought?
So yeah, Himanshu's probably going to back me up on this as well. But essentially, when we talk about Kanban system members, the whole concept of team doesn't even exist then. We could have a team that'd be a bonus, that'd be brilliant, right? But can you imagine when you go to a higher level, the people who are collaborating, they're not actually part of a team, they're representing other teams. So they're collaborating together, if that makes sense. And really, it's whatever is reasonable. In fact, the Kanban system members can define policies about all sorts of things, about, how we collaborate, how we manage the flow, how frequently we reflect on how we're doing. It needs to be there when we're doing that. There are no events in Kanban, but there's other options like Kanban for complexity where events come in, and it actually almost looks very Scrum-like, except it doesn't have a Scrum Master and a product owner. But you could use whatever type of Kanban might suit you. Himanshu, what are your views on that?
No, I agree. Kanban doesn't have any defined roles or number of team members. In fact, a number of manufacturing organizations use automated Kanban systems in their inventory management or in their delivery management. Amazon uses automated Kanban at a big scale. Once the order comes to them, it automatically goes through various levels. I think there will be a point in very near future where when we place the order, it will automatically go through various stages of packaging and all of that, and then delivery by a flying cart will happen at our doorstep. So again, yes, Kanban does not need any particular roles or number of people.
Oh, great. Thank you. Let me go to another point now, be more specific about Kanban. Himanshu, the 5 fundamentals, there's something called the 5 fundamentals of Kanban. What do these mean, and what are they, basically? Why do we have these fundamentals?
Okay, see, these are the 5 fundamental practices of Kanban. Yeah, and these kind of try to serve as our North Star when we are trying to implement any Kanban practice. And John can add to this after me, but so you visualize the workflow. And this is the fundamental step to adopting and implementing any Kanban method. You need to visualize either on a physical board or an electronic Kanban board. If you can visualize the value stream, then you can implement the Kanban system. The next one is limiting the work in progress. How much work do you want to keep within the system? Then you manage the flow. That's the third one. All of these policies we need to make explicit either on the Kanban board, which is physical, or somewhere electronically if your Kanban board is electronic. And finally, we implement feedback loops. We improve the whole system collaboratively. We evolve this whole system experimentally. So these are the 5 fundamentals of Kanban when we are implementing Kanban anywhere.
I see. Jean, have you worked on a Kanban board where some of these fundamentals did not exist, for example, or you had problems because of not following or not applying the fundamentals?
Yes, and that was one of the motivations behind the work that Jain Vikanti and I did last year. We published Kanban Guide because we were going around and we were looking at boards on the wall and the blocked columns, and they were just visualizing stuff, and it wasn't Kanban, And so we wanted to be clear. We wrote a really short guide saying, what Himanshu was saying is absolutely fine. Kanban method. And what we did was we tried to pare it right back, get Kanban from knowledge paired right back to the bare bone principles, if you like. Actually, there are no principles. We have a bit of a joke about that in Kanban Guide. There are no values and no principles. But even though Kanban method would, of course, you can use them. That's not a problem. The thing is that it's like anything in life, really. People abuse them, don't they? So the people don't do things properly. I'm sure they don't do projects properly. They don't do Scrum properly. They don't do Kanban properly, right? So we're trying to help people understand what really is the minimum. What Himanshu was talking about is a fantastic guide, Essential Kanban Condensed Guide for Kanban methods. Very good at kind of paring down what Kanban method is all about. If people want to use Kanban method, if they want to use something a bit more bare bones, just to get people started with their Kanban boards and some 3 basic practices and 4 basic measures, they can look at Kanban guide. So it's really trying to help people understand what it is. I think if we can help people understand what Kanban is, then it's kind of easier to ask them to kind of do it well, if that makes sense.
Thank you. I can relate to this on how people use a specific technique. Probably this is off topic a little bit, but I know from my experience with MS Project, the scheduling software. It's a scheduling software, and it's mainly used for, it's very effective in what if scenarios, and to understand what happens if an activity gets delayed, and if the resource is missing, etc. But people tend to use it as a visualization tool only, just to print out Gantt charts and put them on the board, without understanding the value behind the strength of the tool. And I believe something similar can happen with Kanban. But the message we are trying to convey is it's not just an art that we put on the wall and you look at it. It is a visualization tool, and it's a technique, and it's very important to have this visibility. But as you are saying, you need also to follow the guide and the fundamentals to get the maximum out of it. Now, referring back to the study that we mentioned in the news session and then in the first part of the broadcast, why do you think Scrum, or let me ask a different question. Can you use Scrum and Kanban on the same project? Can you use multiple techniques on the same project, or is it just you choose one, you pick one?
I can do that if you want. Okay, go ahead, Himanshu.
Well, so I think we shouldn't say Scrum versus Kanban, as John said. I mean, Scrum and Kanban. And I mean, I think in 90% of Scrum implementations, you will see a Kanban board that the team is using of having a backlog, and then various stages through which the work goes to finish. So that's at a very basic is a Kanban board implementation, not necessarily Kanban principles, but at least you see a Kanban board over there. So there, John.
Yeah, it's I would agree with Himanshu. With Scrum, you can use other approaches. You can use Lean UX. There's also Scrum with UX, for example. You can do Scrum with Kanban and Lean UX. You can combine all sorts of. You do the same with Kanban. In fact, in Kanban guide is specific about that you could add techniques from other approaches. You can use time flow, for example, which if you have a very expensive constraint and you can't really move it around, you might need something a bit more advanced. So both Scrum and Kanban are really designed as like minimal strategies really to kind of get you started, and we kind of know in your context you might need something extra to keep you going, if that makes sense.
Okay. And how easy it is to train people on Kanban in specific? Is it easier than the rest of techniques, or is it the same? Do you need training at all, Himanshu?
Okay, so see, Kanban is a very simple technique, to understand, but to put it in practice requires a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication to the principles. So it is easy to train. Anyone can train in Kanban, but the mindset requires coaching. It requires dedication and hard work.
I would agree with Himanshu.
What do you think, John?
Yeah,
you've trained people on Kanban. You are a coach. And,
absolutely.
So what did they say, and how did they apply it? Have you heard from them after they applied it in practice?
Absolutely. My usual strategy is I try to train people on the fly when they're just about to do something and I think they might need another option. I might give them some just-in-time teaching moment to say, you might need to look at this, or you mightn't be aware of this option, and I'll show it to you now, as opposed to teaching everybody up front and then they might forget about 3 months later. But there are some very good training courses around. I know Himanshu does a one-day class. You can go to prokanban.org as well. You can do a 2-day class with them. You can go to Kanban University. There's a number of certifications from them, also from TameFlow. There's loads of. We're not short of training classes on Kanban. But if I'm with a client, and I know, for example, that they need to have a basic understanding of flow, and they don't have 2 days, they have an hour, I would play an online Kanban simulation with them just to give them a basic appreciation, just through playing a game, like playing Monopoly. It's kind of a bit of fun, and they see the charts how they're operating. And there's a very good one called Twig, TWIG, like twig, stick, And you can find it on actionableagile.com, analytics.actionableagile.com/twig. And it's really, really cool. And in 1 hour, maybe with a talkative group, you might need an hour and a half. But most people, 1 hour is good enough. And it gets them going at least. They'll still need the 1 or 2 day class maybe later on to get a full appreciation, because as Himanshu was saying, there's a lot of discipline required. Limiting the amount of things that you focus on is hard. It's really hard. We know what to do, we just don't do it. The trick is doing it.
I know, and so I'm receiving a lot of comments on questions, so I'll be looking at this in a minute. Let me just finish our main interview on the matrix that you can use to measure how well the technique is working. So if a client asks you, okay, you've trained the team or you've trained that person and they've started using the technique, how would you know if it's valuable? How do you measure the value behind or from using Kanban? Are there any metrics?
Yeah, there are. There's 4 minimum ones. Kanban method goes a bit further, has some additional ones, and the other approaches have other ones as well, and that's absolutely fine. Absolute minimum, bare bones, cycle time. How long does something take, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you could have a number of them. Some people think you've only one cycle, and you might have a number of cycle times to figure like end-to-end customer cycle time. How long did it take the team to deliver something? How long did it take the team to feed the team? You know, so there's a few cycle times. So cycle time, throughput, how much stuff are we delivering? And work item age, of course, how old are the items in the system? Are we putting more stuff in on top of the team, on top of the stuff they're already doing? And WIP, of course, WIP is like a leading measure, really gives you an indication. When you see loads of work in the system, we kind of know the system is going to get blocked fairly soon. All these measures are great. You need charts to bring them to life. But one thing that we must not get lost in is remembering that the throughput measure, for example, is an output measure. So we're not really figuring out whether we're delivering any value. So we need to be checking in with our customers and end users and basically checking how satisfied they are, and maybe doing some experiments as well. Not everything if you're using a backlog, not everything on the backlog needs to be delivered. Maybe you do some cheap experiment and you might find out that maybe you should never build it. So a bit of focus, just be more customer centric, I would say, and using those 4 measures to guide you with the charts that support them would be a great way to go. And if I was to pick one chart for a team, it would be the work item aging chart. It tells me almost immediately if a team is overloading itself. You can use traffic light colors on Actionable Agile, for example, and if all the items are in red, we kind of know, well, we're not finishing things that we started, right? So we're leaving them there to rot.
Thank you. Excellent. I will go back to Himanshu with one of the audience questions. So I have a question here. Is Kanban an operation management method or a project management method? Well, both of you can actually respond to this. Most of the not IT example appear to be about operation going all the way back. So what do you think, Himanshu?
So it started in operations in manufacturing, but as we've said, the applications in today's day and age can be to anything that can be visualized, whether it's software development, marketing, any other service. Insurance companies are using Kanban in a big way. NHS uses Kanban both for operations, business as usual, and for change management. So it is both an operations management method and a project management method.
Thank you. I have another question for John. Can managers participate in agile ways of working, create show, by the way? This is from Matthew.
Yeah, absolutely, Matthew. Yeah. So the interesting thing in Scrum is that they don't have roles anymore, they're accountabilities. So you could be a project manager with a Scrum Master accountability or product owner accountability, or even be a developer. The key thing is, and I used to be a project manager myself for 15 years, about 15 years ago, and it's the mindset that you bring in. So are you focused on outcomes? Are you focused on customer satisfaction as opposed to delivering outputs by a delivery date? So absolutely. But I would say that if you're uncomfortable with Scrum, A lot of people kind of say to me, well, when should you use Scrum and when should you use Kanban? For me, it's more about what do you believe, what's your belief system and what's more aligned with the way you think. And sometimes if, for example, you're not into the idea yet of some of the things that are in the Scrum guide, Kanban guides can be tempting, but what people don't realize is that it requires a lot of discipline, because in projects, what we tend to do is we tend to push work into teams. And if you use Kanban, we kind of change that around. It's almost like the race between the hare and the tortoise is how I describe it. So leave stuff on the backlog. It's okay. It will actually finish faster than if you get all the hares starting from the backlog at the same time. The tortoise will win. So having that discipline. So absolutely, I don't see any reason why project managers couldn't do that, or program managers, or portfolio product directors even. Yeah.
Indeed. And in that, Himanshu, would you like to add more to this?
Yes, I would say that, again, I mean, Scrum and Kanban are used in teams and very successfully. But in larger projects where you need coordination, project managers are required. It is, as acknowledged in DSDM, which is Dynamic Systems Development Methodology. It has a role called project manager, which is looking after multiple teams and coordinating and providing that level of governance. In other agile methods like SAFe, you've got release train engineers, which are essentially project managers there. So project managers definitely have a big role to play in agile ways of working, I would say.
So in that line of thought, if you were to convince, let's say, a construction company, High Speed 2, let's say, for example, a big infrastructure project, and if you were to convince them of Agile methodology of working, they haven't used it before, how would you sell it? How would you sell Agile in general and Kanban in specific to overcome, the most obvious problems with project management? It's behind schedule and over budget and the miscommunication. Is there a selling point that is very strong that you could tell project managers, if you use this, if you have this mindset, then you'll be avoiding these shortcomings and you'll be achieving more success? John, what do you think?
The first thing I would say is that I wouldn't be in the business of selling or convincing people. So I'd be looking for them to come to me and say, I've got a problem here. Because if I try to convince people, it's like, they need to want to do it themselves. You know what I mean? So, but if they came along to me and said, well, they want better, faster, cheaper, that would be an indication they just want to make things more efficient. And it would kind of give me a signal that they might not be ready for the full agile mindset and might have to kind of taper down the expectations in terms of what would be possible in that situation. If it became clear to me that they really wanted to be adaptive and they wanted to, when there was problems, for example, when they thought they'd kind of put the train line straight through a particular field, but then they discover there's loads of bones or whatever, and it creates all sorts of complications if they can't move a forest or whatever it is. If they want to be adaptable to what's going on and being able to maneuver, then that would give me an indication that maybe they could do something a bit more advanced. But really, in terms of, it might surprise you to hear this, but I'd like teams to decide what methods they use. That creates a new problem about how do we manage across the whole project or the whole program in terms of how do we synchronize. But there are a number of patterns out there in the market. As Himanshu mentioned, one of them's SAFe, for example. You've got Nexus, which is probably one of my favorites, which is kind of very compatible with all sorts of different types of method and works with all different levels of maturity for agility as well. And then you got the more advanced frameworks as well, like LESS, which is more, but they're more product oriented and might not be as suited to a project setup.
Thank you, Himanshu.
So I
would you like to add anything? I
definitely.
What John said about he wants people to come to him and explain the problem.
Well, see, and I agree with that. I mean, we can use agile ways of working in construction and, let's say, in rail industry, manufacturing, would we call it, or high. But but most of that application is during planning phase or problem solving phase. Yeah, once you've done the planning, so let's say construction, you're building a block of flats with 21, 22 floors. Most of the agile way of working would be when you are actually planning. You're working to get a planning permission. You're creating plans. You are talking to your customers on how does this design look, kind of thing. But once you've done that, that's it really. You just now have to stack the floors up. Yeah. So again, it's about application of agile, and I know people might disagree with this and even call this controversial, but I think that agile should be used when we don't exactly know how we are going to get to our destination. There is a lot of uncertainty, there is a lot of complexity. But if there are things that we know how to do, we have been doing them time and time again and very predictable, then we don't need to be adaptive in that scenario.
Thank you for the message. One important, I guess, we have practitioners, maybe they would be interested in knowing the most popular or recognized Kanban certifications. The name of that certification, John.
Yeah, the most popular one at the moment would be from Kanban University, I would say. It's more established, it's been on for quite a bit. So you get a Kanban Management Practitioner. I think you do it over two segments or something. You can do them combined as well. I think it's about 4 days. Sometimes you can do it a bit less. And they do Kanban system design and how you actually manage the Kanban system as well. They have more advanced classes as well, Kanban maturity method and all that type of stuff. A new kid on the block would be Pro Kanban. So they've got applying professional Kanban. It's a 2-day class, and the test has an assessment. The test is very difficult. You don't even have to go to the class. You can actually just go online and do the test. Also, you got TameFlow. Can't remember. I think TameFlow have Mastering Flow and Mastering Throughput. So I think it's two-day classes. That's a fairly new kid on the block as well, but I call it the most advanced Kanban on the planet. It's if you really want to go full hog, you can look at TameFlow. It's very, very good. Lots of other ones as well, but they'd be the most popular ones.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for answering our audience. I have this nice comment I'd like to a nice interview. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Himanshu, as well. So what would you say as a final comment, the last note on this? I'll start with Himanshu and then just a few words at the end.
Well, I'd say, and John's already said this, Kanban is a very effective technique, very effective method. If you do if you do want to try it, stick with it for some time before kind of making your mind. It does require some dedication to it. It can be used for personal development as well.
I go along with that. I have a Kanban board myself, trying to keep myself sane. And the other thing I would say as well, for those people who are into complexity, building up on what Himanshu was saying earlier, got something fairly predictable, just do it. Come up with your Gantt chart and just off you go, happy days, exactly what you need to do. It's not often I find those situations, if I'm honest, but you could do that, right? If the work is complicated, you can use Scrum, you can use Kanban, you can use lots of different approaches. If it gets a bit complex, you're kind of heading towards Scrum. If you get really complex, maybe look at Lean UX, Lean Startup, that kind of thing. But watch out for the new edition of Kanban for complexity, known as Complexity, coming out at the end of this quarter. So Kanban can be used in the complicated, complex, and chaotic spaces. And some of us are in chaos sometimes. So how about that? Getting ourselves out of a bit of chaos sometimes.
Yeah, indeed. So thank you. I'd like to say thank you for joining us, Jean and Himanshu. This was a very useful session for people who practice Kanban already and for those who aren't and looking forward maybe to learn all about it. Thank you for joining me. And I hope that we can maybe also meet on other broadcasts in the future. I'd like to wish you a nice remaining of the day. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks for having me.
To say to our audience also that our team is getting bigger. PM Radio Westminster team has welcomed a new news editor, Carla Roach, who prepared the news for today. We are looking to expand our team, so if you are a passionate person about project management, if you are passionate about media presentation, PM Radio Westminster would love to have you on board. Our next episode is on the last Wednesday of February, which is the 24th. So until we are live again, we would like to wish you all to stay safe and stay healthy, and Radio Westminster, all the best, and